Welcome to Good Day on All Day. This morning we are talking about easing the stress and anxiety that comes with this time of year. It's very exciting, but it's a lot for a lot of people. Kelly Smith is a mindfulness author. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you've got a new journal out, and it's the whole idea, whether it be the holidays or a random Tuesday. Life is hard, and there are a lot of things that cause anxiety, but we can do some things to ease it a little bit.
Absolutely. And usually it's just little simple things that we can do. It doesn't have to be a full overhaul.
Okay, because I think a lot of people think I don't have the time for this, which is
Classic.
Probably the case,
I think that too
which is
sometimes.
mean why you need it, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about meditation as a whole and mindfulness. What does that mean to the average person, and how can someone get into it if maybe they've never done it?
Yeah, so I like to think about meditation and mindfulness as these two different things. So if your mind's a light bulb, when you're practicing mindfulness, you're taking that light bulb and you're turning it up all the way, so you're fully illuminating whatever's happening in front of you. Meditation, I think of it as turning the light bulb into a laser pointer. So you're taking all of that mental power and you're focusing it on just one single thing. Both are really beneficial because if you think about either the light being on all the way or the laser pointer, we're basically taking away all of that feeling of I need to pay attention to this and that and this constant like juggling act, and we're practicing intentional introspection where we're just being like, okay, how can I become the calm in the storm and focus on a thing? How can I be mindful? How can I focus on just my breath? And I think it really helps when you're feeling like not only where am I going to find time for this, but how am I possibly going to do all of these things that in my head I think I quote have to do when we don't usually have to do them. But how can I just hit the pause button and just focus on a thing?
You talked about that list. The list is very long, especially this time of year. It seems like each day it just gets longer and longer.
Yes.
What is your advice for folks who, are coming into December and already stressed and already a bit anxious of what this next month looks like for them?
Yeah, so there's two things that I really like to think about, and one of them is just having realistic expectations, which I'm sure we've heard before, but really thinking about, how much can I actually do? Like what I have to give or what I can accomplish in a day is finite, it's not infinite. And for me, thinking about that concept of like it's finite is a little bit freeing because once I've given everything I can give, that's kind of it. So having realistic expectations for what actually can be done this time of year. How many things can I do? How, quote, special can I make something? And then I also really like this technique where you kind of like either hold or release things. So you can write down a list where you can say, what do I actually want to hold on to, or what do I actually need to do or want to do? And then what can I kind of let go of? Like what can I release? And often what you can let go of is usually a lot longer than what you actually have to do or what you want to do this time of year.
And maybe you don't look at it like that until you actually write it down.
Yep. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Okay, this is not that important in the grand scheme of things. As far as writing those lists, I'm a list person. I like to cross off the list.
Me too.
I've never really thought about doing a list when it comes to not actionable things to just be done with, but more things that are going on in my head.
Yep. So I love a list too. It's really helpful. There are even some lists in here. You can tell I'm a list lover from the book. But in those moments, what I like to do is write this giant list. So literally write down even the little stuff, right? Like in my own household, I've been thinking about, I need to really start organizing the toys because we have little ones to do a toy rotation. I should really go through and kind of sort them by age or whatever. It's something I've been thinking about doing for months and I've never done it. So writing this huge mega list of all the things that I quote should do or need to do. It'll be this giant list. And then I look at it and I start saying, what can I cross off of this list immediately? What do I actually just not need to do? What is not important? And I'll just go through and just start crossing those things off. And it's always like the silliest things. It's like, do I really need to go and get the matching Christmas pajamas? Maybe not. Maybe I don't need to be doing that.
Sure.
And then you can then pull from what's left. And then from that, you can still do another kind of purge of like, okay, this is actually what's important to me or what I need to do. And then still these things, maybe it could be a save for later list.
Sure.
But then you still have them written down there, because I always worry about forgetting things. And I'm like, it's just in my head, I need to write it down. And you can write a save for later list and say, okay, once we get through the holidays, then I can circle back and go and say, okay, maybe now I tackle the toy rotation. I don't have to do it immediately right here. And I find that really useful as a list lover, but also save that list for later. Circle back to it.
You talked about the holidays. You had mentioned, maybe ahead of a holiday party or a family get together where maybe it will be awesome, but it's still a little anxiety driven, maybe, to meditate before and after. Why?
So I like to kind of meditate before, and I want to kind of preface this with meditation can be, studies tell us even 8 minutes is enough to get the benefits. So it can be just a couple of minutes. You can sit there in the car, park, take a few deep breaths before you go in for whatever you're doing. And that helps to really quiet the nervous system. And so that kind of fight or flight experience, that kind of racing, heart, that like breathlessness, the sweating, we can move away from that fight or flight response into more of what's called like the rest or digest. But we're basically quieting the nervous system so we don't come in like super hot, already activated. For me, that looks like coming in not overstimulated. I get really kind of like snappy when I'm like, okay, the kids are loud. I just had to, I'm already sweating because I had to put all this stuff in the car. You're just overstimulated. Sure. And so can you turn the volume down on that first so you can come in just a little bit calmer, a little bit less reactive. And then I like a few minutes after, because even if you had a great time, again, it can be really activating, really stimulating. And so then how do you kind of turn the volume down so you're not just like in this chaotic space after the family time has been spent?
Sure, because you're kind of going off adrenaline, and that's, you've got to come down at some point.
Absolutely.
Time management. How do you do that with the anxiety, especially this time of year?
Yeah, so
only so much time in the day.
And you know what, and that's exactly it, is that I think recognizing there's only so much time in a day. And I think that sometimes not everyone that suffers from anxiety is also kind of a high achieving individual, but I think they often are. And so if you really want to be doing all of these things all of the time, I like to think about it as being as kind and gentle with myself as I would like a friend. Like if you came over to my house and you're like, Kelly, I have to do this and I have to do that, and then there's this thing and I want to make, this happen and this meal, and I would just look at you and be like, do you really have to do all of that? Or just, be like, wow, that sounds like a lot. You have a lot going on. Like, is there a way that you can treat yourself the way that you would treat like a dear friend? And when it comes to time management and that overwhelm, looking at again, like what do I have to do or want to do? And what is just kind of this expectation or these, this noise? And being okay with like, I don't have to do everything. And like, how can you give yourself that same kind of like gentle, loving space that you would give a family member or a child or one of your dear friends?
Yeah, we often give everybody else grace and then
totally
put us on a different
you're like,
level.
I need to do everything. It's fine for you
to
just do those things, and that's amazing, you're doing great, but I have to do 10 times more for whatever reason.
If someone is watching, they've never done any meditation, they have never practiced, this mindfulness, how do you start? Because it can be a little intimidating or a little like, I don't know, I don't think I can turn my mind off. How baby steps in, what would be your advice?
So baby steps in, I always think the best place to start is actually a guided meditation. It's part of the reason that on my podcast I sit in this little closet in my house. I record these short guided meditations. So people just like that can just pick a topic and say, oh, here's an 8-minute meditation for anxiety. They can just hit play, listen, and you're being walked through it. I think that is like, it's like if you go to a yoga class, right? You have an instructor that's saying, okay, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna move into this, and you can just kind of follow along. So I think that's like the perfect place to start. You only need a few minutes. Also, breath work, I think even just a few deep breaths, or like it's called a relaxation breath. So it's an inhale for 4 and an exhale for 7. So extending your exhales is another one of those that signals to the nervous system it's okay to like relax and unwind. It actually mimics what we do at night when we get tired. We start exhaling more, which is why we'll yawn. It's a forced inhale, but it mimics that. It tells the body that it's kind of wind down time. So inhaling for 4, exhaling for 7, doing that maybe 5 or 10 times. That's all you have to do. You don't need anything. You don't even need to listen to anything.
Right.
Just a few deep breaths.
You've got this journal out. It's right after the first of the year, correct?
Yep, January 2nd.
Which maybe that's when we need it most. We're coming off of this high and coming off of a lot, and hopefully you mentioned too the benefits of actually writing things down. What a concept, right?
What a concept. But didn't they tell you this in school?
Yes.
They're like, no, write it down and like you'll remember it more. They've actually shown that like writing something down signals to your brain like this is important. Like pay attention to this thing that you're writing. And I think also right around kind of that first of the year, things are really chaotic during the holidays. We're just surviving, we're getting through it. But then I think we naturally kind of go into this like reassessment at the beginning of the year. Maybe you're like, you know what, I do want to actually do something about my anxiety this year. And how can can I create a little micro habit that's going to really serve me in the long run, which is what I hope, like this journal every day should take you less than 20 minutes. It's not another like huge big thing that you have to do, but it's like, how can I do this one little thing that's going to really serve me in the long run? And we're kind of thinking that way by the first of the year. It's like, how can I kind of just make these little changes to make a big impact?
Better me. Where can they find it? Where can they find your podcast?
So all the places, the book, Amazon, Target, you know, anywhere, Google, you'll find it. The podcast, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you'll just search Mindful in Minutes in the search bar, and you'll see a little picture with my face on it, and you'll know you found it.
There you go, Mindful in Minutes. Kelly Smith, thank you.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you so
it.
much.
Happy holidays.
You too.
All right, now back to All Day.